Are you thinking about buying a home in British Columbia? If you are, there's an additional cost that could surprise you, and it's called the property transfer tax. For some buyers, it's thousands and thousands of dollars, and that's on top of the selling price. But don't worry, in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what it is, how much it could cost you, and how you could avoid paying it altogether. This isn't going to be the most exciting video, but stick around because this is important information that every homebuyer in BC needs to know. Over the past few years, I've helped dozens of clients or families buy and sell real estate, and one of the most common questions I get is about the property transfer tax, or how much is it and who has to pay it. When you buy or gain interest in a property in British Columbia and that interest is registered at the Land Title Office, you're required to pay property transfer tax unless you qualify for an exemption. So you're probably asking too, what are the exemptions for the property transfer tax and how do you calculate it? I'll get to the exemptions later in the video, but let's start with how you calculate the property transfer tax. The tax is calculated on the fair market value of the property on the transfer date, or the date that the property is registered in your name, which is typically the possession date. Here's the formula and how it breaks down. The BC property transfer tax is calculated based on this formula. You're going to pay 1% of the fair market value up to and including $200,000, 2% of the fair market value greater than $200,000 and up to and including $2 million, 3% of the fair market value greater than $2 million, and a further 2% on residential property over $3 million. The fair market value most of the time is going to be the selling price that you paid for the property. There are instances, say with a death or divorce or an estate sale, where the government may want to calculate a different value for the property than what you're actually paying for it. That's very rare, but this gives them the opportunity to basically look into it to make sure that what you're paying is the fair market value for the property. But let's look at a few examples of how this tax is calculated on different selling prices. Let's say, for example, you're buying a condo or a home for $400,000. The tax would be calculated as 1% on the first $200,000, which is $2,000, 2% on the portion between $200,000 and your final price of $400,000, which is $4,000, for a total property transfer tax, in this case, of $6,000. Let's say you're buying a single-family home instead of a condo and your purchase price is $800,000. You would pay the 1% of the first $200,000 and 2% on the portion between $201,000 and $800,000 for $12,000 for your total property transfer tax amount of $14,000. And if we move up to $1 million purchase price on a home or a condo, again, you're going to pay 1% of the first $200,000, then you're going to pay 2% on the portion between $201,000 and $1 million for a total property transfer tax, in this case, of $18,000. So I think you get the picture on things between 400 and let's say 1.2 million, but let's look at what the tax would be if your purchase price is a little bit higher than that. Let's say you've bumped up to a purchase price of $2.1 million on your residential property. Again, you'll pay the 1% on that first 200,000, 2% on the portion between 201,000 and 2 million, and then there's an additional 3% of the fair market value over $2 million. In this case, your total property transfer tax would be $41,000. And taking it a little further, let's say you're buying a home somewhere in Vancouver or a nice luxury home somewhere else within the province, and your purchase price is $4.9 million. You'll pay the 1% on the first 200,000, 2% on the portion between 201,000 and 2 million, 3% of the fair market value portion over 2 million, and then an additional 2% on residential property over 3 million. And in this case, your total property transfer tax is $163,000. And you have to remember that in all of these cases, this tax is on top of your purchase price and on top of your legal fees and your moving expenses. So it's important to budget accordingly and keep this in mind when you're buying your next property. But there is some good news, as I mentioned earlier, and there are two major exemptions that you may qualify that we'll have a look at next. Two major property transfer tax exemptions that people can qualify for in BC is the first-time homebuyers exemption and the newly built homes exemption. The first-time homebuyers exemption gives first-time homebuyers a full exemption up to a purchase price of $835,000 if it's their principal residence. It will also give them a partial exemption if their purchase price is between $835,000 and $860,000. The exemption for newly built homes will give you a full exemption on the property transfer tax if your fair market value is up to $1.1 million and it's your principal residence. You can also qualify for a partial exemption between 1.1 million and 1.15. If you'd like to get a good estimate of how much you're going to potentially pay or you're going to save on the property transfer tax on your next purchase, the British Columbia Real Estate Association has a great calculator on their website, and I'll give you a link down in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. But as I recommend to all of my clients, the calculator is good to give you an estimate, but you definitely want to talk to a lawyer or a tax accountant to finalize the amount of your exposure to the property transfer tax. Knowing the ins and outs of the property transfer tax is important for budgeting for your next purchase. And if you've learned anything new in this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, or leave your questions down in the comments down below. And if you'd like a full guide on how to buy your next home in British Columbia, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.